Good day, grade 10. This is Vallejos, your science teacher. In this video, I'm going to run you through Science 10, Quarter 1, Week number 4 module. What is the title of the module for week number 4? It is entitled Plate Tectonics, Plate Boundaries. There is an introduction there in module number 4. A variety of natural calamities occur on Earth. In fact, all of us experience these calamities like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, landslides, floods, fires, and typhoons. The most destructive of these hazards include earthquake and volcanic eruptions. Last October 15, 2013, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit Bohol and Cebu, which resulted to a great devastation in infrastructure and even claimed lives. On September 20, 2018, a landslide caused by heavy rainfall and quarrying operations killed 78 people in Naga, Cebu. Just this year, January 12, 2020, Taal volcano in Batangas made massive explosions which greatly damaged crops and aquatic resources. In the previous lessons, modules 1, 2, 3, you learned that the Earth's crust is made up of several plates, and these plates are moving slowly and constantly. We call this phenomenon as plate tectonics. These plates have boundaries, and when boundaries meet, many geological processes will occur. So, the occurrence of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are mostly associated with tectonic boundaries. Let us begin this module with a pretest. You are going to answer a 10-item multiple choice pretest. After the pretest is activity number 1 entitled Know Your Boundary Part 1. So you will define a boundary and describe the importance of a boundary. So you will simply have to analyze two pictures or illustrations. The first illustration is that of a pavement where there is a yellow line or painting that says do not cross and you are stepping on it. And there is a question. What does the yellow line indicate? The second illustration is a picture of a row of houses with subdivisions or divided. So what structure divides one house from the other? And what is a boundary? Discussion. The yellow line in figure 1 shows a boundary. A boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area. It is a dividing line that separates one area from the other. It is important because it secures one's property. For example, your lot boundary. Utlanan sa imuhang lote. Figure 2, a concrete structure that protrudes or extends between two houses serves as a boundary in between both houses. Boundaries are everywhere, and the most common boundary is on land or in lot property. In the Earth, the lithosphere, which is a combination of the crust and the uppermost mantle, as mentioned in modules 1, 2, and 3, is divided into several segments called plates. These plates are slowly and constantly moving in different directions. The plate boundaries are found at the edge of the lithospheric plates. So, plate boundary is ang tumoy, utlanan sa kada boundary. Activity number 2. Know Your Boundary Part 2. This time, the objectives are for you to be able to identify the different types of boundary and describe each type. You will simply have to read and understand and comprehend text or paragraph. Plate boundaries are edges where two plates meet. Kung mahiskot kay tag plate boundary, mao ni siya ang utlanan sa kung asa mag-abot ang duha ka plates. Most geologic activities including earthquakes, mountain buildings, volcanic activities take place at the plate boundaries. So there are 3 types of plate boundaries mentioned in your text or in this text. First, convergent boundary. Convergent boundary occurs when two plates move toward each other. Again, kung ang duha ka plates nagpadong og bangga, gitawag na siya nga boundary as convergent boundary. It produces what we call as a subduction zone when one of the plates move underneath the other or nay maunlod na plate. What happens at the boundary depends on the nature of the colliding plates. Kung ang duha ka plates equal ang ilang density, walay maunlod kay parehas sila gibug-aton or gibus-okon. They usually just push up against each other, forming a mountain chain. If the two plates are of unequal density, na ay gamay og density, nasay dako og density, one plate usually sinks beneath the other in what we call as a subduction zone. Examples, the west coast of South America and the Himalayan mountains in between Russia and Europe or China and Europe. They are convergent plate boundaries. So, naitulo ka possible nga cases of collision or panagbangga sa convergent boundaries. Una, pwede ang magbangga kay oceanic plate and another oceanic plate. Diba sa module number 1, naghisgot man taog duha ka klase nga crust. Na ay oceanic crust o na ay continental crust. Nya ang atong gihisgutan ato nga si oceanic crust is much more denser, mas busok, mas dasok. So, siya ang mas bugat. Kung ang magbangga, duha ka buok oceanic nga mga plates, pareha silang duha nga bugat, pareha silang duha nga dasok, pareha silang density. So, kay pareha man silang density, walay mo pa ubos. So, inigbangga nila at their place of meeting, instead nga na mo subduct, wala may ubos, wala may mapaubos nila kay pareham silang density, they will just form mountain chains in between. So, asa man yung makita kay oceanic, mga mountain ranges under the ocean. The second case is possibly a convergence or panagbangga between one oceanic plate and one continental plate. Lain-lain sila og density. Si oceanic plate mas bugat, mas dasok, mas dense. Sunsay mahitabo, kay siya man ang bugat, siya ang mupaubos. So, inigbangga nilang duha, it will go down, it will be pushed underneath, and it will form what we call as a subduction zone. Next, the third possible convergence is between a continental plate and another continental plate. This time, pareha silang density, so walay mo paubos nila, walay maporma nga subduction zone. Unsay lang maporma, inigbangga nila, magporma ra silang mga mountain ranges in between them. Mountain ranges nga makita nato kay na wala man siya na submerge in ocean. Example, the Himalayas, the home of the Yetis. Next kind of boundary is called the divergent boundary. It occurs when two plates move away from each other. Again, si convergent boundary, padong magbangga. Ang ikaduha nga klase nga boundary is called divergent boundary. Unsay buhaton nila, padong sila magbuwag, magpinagyo-ay sila from each other. They create a gap or a rift between them. When the gap widens, it is then evolved into what we call as a rift valley. A rift valley is a lowland region that forms where the Earth's tectonic plates move apart or rift. The rift valleys are found in both land and at the bottom of the ocean, where they are created by the process of seafloor spreading. We will discuss further the process of seafloor spreading in succeeding modules. Divergent boundaries between two oceanic plates produce what we call as mid-oceanic ridges, or they are just a series of mountain ranges that are under water. In the third type of boundaries, we call it as transform plate boundaries. The plates do not converge, they do not also move apart, but they slide past each other. So, sa convergent, padong magbangga. Sa divergent, padong magbuwag. Sa transform fault, mag-ibid-ibid. So, dili sila magbangga, dili sila magbuwag, pero they are just sliding past each other in opposite directions. A horizontal strike-slip fault occurs in areas where there is a transform plate boundary. Kung ang plate boundary is transformed, there will be no creation of mountains, there will be no volcanoes that will be produced. Instead, what is experienced is simply earthquake. Mamula lagi gi-mention kung convergent o divergent mag-earthquake. Yes, of course. Magbangga ba day ng duha ka plate, di ba day ka mauyog? Mauyog jud ka. Kung magbuwag ang duha ka plate, di ba day ka mauyog? Mauyog sad ka. So all of these plate boundaries, when they move, or what will they create? They will create earthquakes. Only the different types of boundaries lain-lain silang mapurma nga mga geologic features on the face of the earth. So, activity number 2, ang inyo dihang makita are pictures of the different kinds of boundaries that is illustrated using the crackers, biskwit. Figure A, ang duha ka crackers kay wala nagbangga, wala nagbuwag, nagtapadra pero nagmove past each other in opposite directions. One going down, one going up. The second figure B are the two plates moving away from each other. Kaning isa going to the left, the other one going to the right. And the third figure are the crackers that is moving towards each other. Padong sila magbangga against each other. So this is a simplified illustration of how the crustal plates move under our feet. You will answer then these questions. What are the types of plates? Well, how will you describe each type of plate boundary and how are they characterized? What do the crackers represent? What do the arrows represent? So what do the crackers represent? They represent the plates. What do the arrows represent? The direction of the plates. What type of plate boundary is figure A? What type of plate boundary is figure B? What type of plate boundary is figure C? And then write a short description of each figure, A, B, and C. Discussion. There are 3 types of plate boundaries: convergent, divergent, and transform fault boundaries. The 3 boundaries are characterized by their relative motion. So when we say convergent, 2 plates moving towards each other. It is also called a destructive boundary. Destructive. Nganong destructive man siya? Kaya kung ang duha ka plates padong magbangga sa ilahang with each other, the impact of the 2 colliding plate buckles the edges of one or both plates and it forms a rugged mountain range and sometimes bend down into a deep seafloor trench. Kung padong magbangga, padong niya gubon, padong niya i-destroy ang edges sa plates. So it's called destructive. So, inig-ana niya, imbis wala tayong mga mountains, i-destruct niya, na mahamsaka na lang noon. Destructive. The second type is the divergent boundary. It occurs between 2 tectonic plates that move away from each other. It is along these boundaries, lava spews from long fissures and geysers spurt superheated water. It is also called a constructive boundary. Construct nga naman naaman siya mapurma nga bagong yuta. Ang yuta gikan sa ilawom sa mantle, it is in magma form, liquefied form. Kung naanay duha ka plate boundaries nga magbuwag, of course na toy mas slit dito nga makuan or crack or opening mugawas si magma, ma-cool down, ma-solidify, mahimong yuta underneath the oceans. So it is called constructive boundary. Si divergent boundary kay it is able to create new lands, newer, younger lands. So, iyang gi-construct, nagbago siya og new lands. It generates new crust as the plates move away from each other. And then the third type, the transform fault boundary, occurs when 2 plates slide past each other. It is not constructive, it is also not destructive, pero ang tawag sa iya, conservative. Nga naman, iyang i-conserve. Wa siya gubon nga crust, wala sad siya i-form nga crust. Wa siya i-form nga new crust, wa sad siya i-distract nga old one. So, iyarang gi-conserved. Iyarang naara gihapon. Wala siya giguba, wala siya giporma nga bag-o. Yang gi-conserved ang unsay naara niya. The soda crackers represents the Earth's crust and the arrows indicate the direction of the motion of the plates. Figure A represents transform fault boundary. Figure B represents convergent plate boundary. And figure C illustrates divergent plate boundary. Kanita na activity sa science, no? Kung mabasa lang mo sa discussion part, after every activity, maansira na ninyo tanang questions. Kaya naara diri tanang answers. So all the guide questions given in the activity. By the way, I forgot to mention, sa convergent boundary, dili ra siya destructive. I will discuss this further. Pwede niya siya duha ka kind of this, a name for the convergent boundary. Tara. Una yang na-mention ganina. Si divergent, magporma siya bagong crust. So, mo nang tawagon nato siya constructive boundary. Si convergent, kay magbangga man ang duha ka plates, the crust is consumed in the mantle as one plate dives under another. So, parehaning figure B. Si oceanic crust, because it is denser, kung badong siya mo bangga ni convergent crust or convergent plate, si oceanic crust, it will subduct down. It will be pushed downwards because it is denser. Siya ang mupaubos. So, unsay maporma niya sa ilahang meeting place dire? Makaporma siya what we call as oceanic trenches. Kantil na ilaw na sa dagat. Trench. So, kaya nga nani ang mabuhat, gitawag na to siya og destructive nga boundary. Kaya ang yuta originally ilawom sa dagat, iyang gi-destroy, iyang gi-subduct dito padong para maadto siya padung sa mantle, iyang giguba ang old na crust. Pero dili man sa tanang panahon oceanic crust versus continental crust ang magbangga. There are times nga ang magbangga kay duha ka continental crust sama aning figure number C or letter C. Kaning naa sa left side, this is plate number 1, this is continental. Kaning plate number 2, this is also continental. Puro sila continental nga mga crust. So, pareha silang duha og density, walay mo subduct, walay mo paubos nila. So, unsa day ang gibuhat diri, unsa nahitabo nila? This is a collision motion. Destructive gyapon siya kay naaman siya gi-destroy, pero na-form na noon ang duha ka very large mountain ranges. The correct term for their motion is collision. Next, sa transform fault, the plates slide horizontally past each other. No crust is created, no crust is also destroyed or consumed. Crust is neither created nor consumed. So, mao ni ang figure. So, this is called a conservative plate boundary. Activity number 3, know your boundary part 3. Identify the plates on the map showing plate boundaries and give the processes that occur along these plate boundaries. Naihatag di ang map niya na mga arrows. Question number 1. Unsa ay ang gi-represent aning mga arrows? Question number 2. What plates show convergent boundary? So ato ning tagsa-tagsaon og tan-aw. Kani si Eurasian plate in yellow o si Philippine plate in green. Notice the arrow of Philippine plate padong siya didto pasaka. The arrow of Eurasian plate padong siya paubos. So unsay nahitabo sa ilang duha ka arrow? Ilang duha ka arrow padong magbangga. Unsa gaytoy tawag nato sa boundary kung padong magbangga ang duha ka plates? Diba gitawag ta na siya og convergent boundary. So sa Eurasian plate and the Philippine plate will move towards each other in a convergent plate boundary. Mangita ta diri example sa divergent padong magbuwag. Look at the South American plate and look at the African plate. Si South American towards the left. Si African plate towards the right. Padong ba sila magbangga? No. They're going away or moving away from each other. So the boundary in between them, kaning nasa to nga nila diri nga boundary, mao ni diri gitawag nato og divergent boundary. So diri pwede makaporma og new crust if it is under the ocean. Mugawas ang bagong crust coming from the mantle, the magma inside the mantle. What about transform fault boundaries? Mangita ka diri transform fault boundaries. Nga ba siya gipakita diri nga transform fault boundaries? Di sila magbuwag, dili sila magbangga, nagsikitay or nagibiray la silang duha. Walang ipakita, no? This figure or this map does not show it, pero there is a very famous transform fault boundary on the side of America, on the west coast of America. Daraman si North American plate. Kaning naa niya diri nga nagatubang ni Pacific Ocean. Kani diri niya kay this is a site of transform fault boundary. Wala lang ipakita ani nga figure. Na gani diri ang pinaka-famous na transform fault called the San Andreas Fault. Na gani salida San Andreas ang nagadakay si The Rock. It's an example of a transform fault boundary. It is found in Los Angeles, California. Discussion. The arrows on the map indicate the direction of motion of the plates. A boundary in which two plates move toward each other, causing one of the slabs of the lithosphere to subduct beneath and override in place is called convergent boundary. Divergent boundary, on the other hand, is a region where the crustal plates are moving apart. In this boundary, new crust is generated as the plates pull away from each other. Transform fault boundary occurs when two plates slide past each other. There is no creation of new crust, nor the destruction of old one, but earthquake rattles through a wide boundary zone. San Andreas Fault is a result of transform fault boundary. San Andreas Fault is found in Los Angeles, California. Generalization. There are three figures there and there are discussions about divergent, convergent, and the transform plate boundaries. So let us do some exercises. Wala ni siya makita sa inyong module, but this is just an exercise. This is a drawing representation of the crust. These are both oceanic crust. Crust 1 is going to the left. Crust 2 or plate number 2 is going to the right. They are moving away from each other. So, unsay type sa ilang boundary, gitawag na to sila og divergent boundary. Divergent boundary. So, there are words here na ato ding gamiton or pilian to answer the fill in the blank paragraph. So, this is the paragraph. This is a blank plate margin. What do you think is this? So, sa may naa sa choices na pwede na to i-answer dira. This is a constructive plate boundary. Constructive plate boundary, another term for divergent. Here, the two plates are moving blank from each other. Are they moving away or moving towards? May word nga away or towards? Dara, they are moving apart from each other and form new crust. This process normally occurs under. Look at the figure. Ang mga crust, unsay napailam siya under, unsa man yung naga-blue diri. These are the waters or the oceans of the world. This usually occurs under the oceans and results in the formation of underwater blank. Unsa na ma-form niya dira? Underwater geologic features like mountain ranges, volcanoes, and many others. Some of these volcanoes become so large that they appear above sea level, such as the country Iceland. Did you know that Iceland is a volcanic island on the mid-oceanic Atlantic ridge, the boundary between North American plate and the Eurasian plate? It is known as a constructive plate margin, where a new crust is continually formed in volcanic activity along the ridge as the plates drift apart at the rate averaging 1 centimeter per year. Hinay kayang movement. Ari daw ikaduha nga figure. What is this figure showing? There are two plates and they are moving slide past each other. Wala sila nagbangga, wala sila nagbuwag, padong sila paibid-ibid sa ilang pikas. So these are the words to choose from. Let us fill in the blank. This is a blank plate margin. Kung sa gani nga plate margin, kung transform fault, dili magbuwag, dili magbangga. Transform fault boundary, another term for it is it's a conservative plate margin. Here, the two plates are sliding past each other, and when the plates stick, kung dili smooth ang ilang pagka-slide, kay yuta ko na, magaral-garal na. When the plates stick, it causes tension to build up. Dili diha dayon nga mubutong. Mahimo dayong earthquake. When the tension is built up and released, an earthquake occurs. An example of this is on the blank fault line in Los Angeles, California, the very famous San Andreas fault line, which is adapted into a movie sometime years ago. Ano siya? Si Dwayne Johnson or The Rock ang nagadana. Here, in a conservative plate boundary, crust is neither blank nor blank, and volcanic eruptions do not occur. Crust is neither created nor destroyed, and volcanic eruptions do not occur. Next figure. Duha ka continental crust nagbangga. Plate 1 and plate 2. Nadan siya gifold diha. Nga yuta sa babaw. These are the words to choose from. Let's complete the paragraph. This is a blank plate margin. This is a collision plate margin. Here, the two plates are moving towards each other. And as both plates are continental, continental. Neither of them, neither of them can be subducted. Therefore, the crust is pulled upwards to form the fold mountains. An example is the Himalayas, where the Indian plates collided with the Eurasian plate. Last figure, ocean crust converging with a continental crust. So, si oceanic crust kay mo subduct or mo kanaog or mo paubos padong sa ilaw. These are the choices. This is a blank plate margin. This is a destructive plate margin. Here, the two plates are moving towards each other, and the oceanic plate is being pushed underneath the continental plate because it is denser. This forms a deep sea trench, kantil, ilawom sa dagat. Oceanic crust is melted into magma by the mantle. This then rises along the fault lines to form volcanoes. And that's it. Then you will answer summative test 1.2 part 1. You will just simply color the different plates. So kana sa letter A, gamay kaayo, koloran na nyo red. Unsa nga plate diri. So letter B is big. This is the Pacific plate. Ang color ni letter B, yellow. Meron mga ni kinder, coloring. Then part 2 of the summative test 1.2 is identifying the name of the plate boundary based on the drawing. Unsa ang boundary nga between B and L. Isuwat ninyo diha unsay type sa iyang boundary. And you decide if it is destructive, constructive, collision, or conservative boundary. That's summative test 1.2. And then they have to answer the post-test also in module number 4. The application, the post-test, and the additional activity. And that's the end of quarter 1, week number 4 in science number 10. Bye-bye.